We are here at the last stage of our rifle reloading, and that is seating the bullet with our seating die. Just like the sizing die, we need to set this die up. Now with the sizing die, we ran the ram up and then turned the die all the way down to meet it. If we did that with the sizing die, there is what they call a crimping feature. And like what we talked about before in the anatomy of reloading, there's that little ring called the cantilure. And crimping is really if you have that cantilure to where you actually push that case mouth into the cantilure, those little divots, and it ensures you don't get bullets set back through inertia and loading. I don't like seating and crimping in one motion. In the past, I have found that it doesn't give you a reliable product. So if you want to crimp, what I do is I seat the bullet and then I'll crimp afterwards. And with these, you will get the taper crimp. And a taper crimp is where it just starts to push that case mouth into the cantilure versus a roll crimp. And a roll crimp is more for revolvers or heavy straight-walled cartridges like a 45-70. How we want to set this sizing die up is you have a case that has a primer and powder in it. And what you want to do is run it up, and you're going to thread the die down until it touches the case mouth. Now, this is setting it up for crimping. What we want to do now is make one full turn out. An easy way that I find that a full turn is I try to find some identifying mark on the die. So I see the number 2 right here in line with the corner of the top part of the press, and that's what I'm going to use as my identifying mark. And it doesn't have to be micrometer precision the same, but that's how I want to set that up. Pull the case down, and we're going to set the lock ring. This top spindle is what they call a seating stem. On the seating stem, that's the part that the bullet actually sits in. Okay? And when you want to set this up, I purposely set it up long because it's easier to turn it down and seat it again versus having to seat too short, and then you have to pull the bullet and you have to start all over. Initially seat this bullet, and I can tell that the seating stem is not touching the bullet, so I'm going to raise this up, and I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. A little bit more. There we go.
Yeah.
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 Now, I felt it seat the bullet just slightly. Now, you can actually use the cantilure as a guide to see how far you need to seat the bullet. So obviously I can tell that I have quite a ways to go. So I'm comfortable with just turning it down until I get close to the cantilure. I'm starting to get pretty close. Now, typically you want to seat to where the bullet or the cantilure is half covered or mostly 3/4 of the way covered. The length I'm going for is 2.20, and that's out of the Hornady reloading manual because I'm using a Hornady Full Metal Jacket boat tail. I am at 2.197. That's pretty close. When I go to seat bullets, I usually go plus or minus 0.002. So I'm going to say that this is okay, but I am going to back it off just slightly. All right, 2.211. It needs to come down just a little bit. All right, 2.200. Just like your sizing die, you want to lock everything down when the case is up in the die. That's a little lock ring for the spindle, the seating stems spindle, and everything's locked down. All right. $2.200. So that's the second case that we've taken off after we've set the die. So that's telling me that we're good to go. So I am going to finish seating these bullets, and then I will show you how I go about crimping. All right, we'll be right back. Now that I have all the bullets seated, there's something I wanted to talk about. This is the die that comes with the basic die set from RCBS. Now there is another way to seat bullets, and that's with something called a micrometer. And a micrometer is exactly what it sounds like. It has a numbered dial on here so you can accurately dial your seating stem to different bullets. So if you know you're going to be playing with different bullets, and you know you're going to be loading different load charges, and you want to experiment, or you just want your life to be easier in general, a micrometer seating die is a really good way to go. This is the Lyman Pro seating die. I've used this for about a year or so. And this is the Short Action Customs, the seating die. Now this has a Meditoyo micrometer utilized on their die, and I have been using this die for my 6GT and actually a lot of my 223. I find this to work really well with a multitude of match ogives and other like your seating stems on the bullets. The basic seating stem that comes with the RCBS die is okay for, you know, Full Metal Jacket type bullets, and it will work with some match style bullets, but it's not really designed for everything. Now, what you can do is you can actually take these seating stems, chuck up a projectile, whichever you're going to use, put some toothpaste or a light lapping compound, and you can actually spin the bullet into the seating die, and actually will create a surface mating for the specific bullet that you're going to use. I've done that in the past too. You just would need to get different seating stems, and it's okay, but I have found that, again, the easier way to do it is just to find a seating die that has a stem in it that works for a myriad of bullets.
A plethora. Oh, yes. You have a plethora.
So Hornady, they sell different seating stems for different style bullets that they make, and I've used that one as well. It works pretty good, but again, the Short Action Custom seating die has been my favorite. This is by far the more expensive die of them all. I forget exactly how much it is, but it's a lot. The Lyman Pro would come in next afterwards, and honestly, this works really well too. But if you're going to spend I think this was like 120, which I bought this and I bought that one, so I'm not sponsored by them. This one, if you are going to be, and that works for different calibers too. And since I bought this, they actually make different seating dies made for certain calibers. So this one I have found to work really well across the board. But it is an investment, so if you're not trying to spend a ton of money, maybe go the seating stem route where you customize the seating stems. And if you want to go mid-tier, you could do something like the Lyman. And if you want to go all out, by all means, go with something like the seating die. Now I'm going to go over how I go about crimping 223 for an AR. I don't like using the seating die as a crimp, like I said before, so what I actually use is a Lee factory crimp die. And it uses a kind of unique, get that to focus, a unique collet style portion. So you actually don't even need a cantilure because it squeezes the neck around the bullet itself and it doesn't push the case mouth into it. It's a unique style. How you set up the Lee factory crimp die is you raise the ram, you screw the die down till it touches the ram, and you set the lock ring, and that's going to be your initial setup for a crimp. We're measuring about 0.246. And I didn't feel anything happen. Let's see if it did anything. It went down 1/1000th. So I'm going to screw it down just slightly. Ideally, I'd like about 2 thou crimp, 2 to 3. And there we are. We're at 244 on after crimping. So that's giving us 2/1000ths crimp, which I typically go with 2 to 3/1000ths. And that's how you set up a crimp die, and that's what I do. This portion's pretty fast. It doesn't take a whole lot like the other steps before. Really, it's just seat the bullet, swap out your die, crimp them all, you're good to go. Now I'm going to go over the little tip I talked about earlier when I am prepping my rifle brass. After I size my brass and I prime it and I'm getting ready, before I add powder though, and I'm getting ready to seat a bullet, I like to do something extra to the case neck to prep it to give me neck tension. And what I do is I use what they call a mandrel die. And this mandrel die uses what they call a neck turning mandrel. And what it does is it goes inside. When you run the case up, it runs a mandrel down the case mouth and it helps set tension to when you seat a bullet. Now this particular one is set up to give you 2/1000ths neck tension, and that means that when you size the brass and you run this mandrel through it, it's going to expand the case neck to where there's only going to be 2/1000ths pressure that's going to be squeezing on the bullet from the case neck rather. And the more important thing is that it makes it repeatable and more accurate. The way that you set this up, put a case in, And what I do is I run it up, and after I install the mandrel, so you can do one of two things. You can look inside the die as you screw it down to see how far it's going to go, or you can simply set up the die to where it shows how much the mandrel is going to stick out. And so that's basically showing you that you need to go just a little bit more. And the big thing you don't want to do is you don't want to bottom out the case onto the mandrel. Lower that. And the top of it has an O-ring, so it gives it a little bit of float, and that means it'll self-center just slightly. Run that up. And now I have set neck tension on my piece of brass. And that is something that I do to help give me a little more precision in my cases, in my reloading. So it's not like a super secret tip, but it's something that I do that not everyone does. So I figured I'd share it with you. All right, that's the end of the rifle portion of this on the single stage loading. To recap, everything that we've gone over is how to size the brass, how to prep the brass with the chamfer and deburr, how we primed it, powder, and then seating the bullet to the different lengths. It's pretty basic, and that's all with dealing with that new Starline brass. Next video, what I'll go over is going to be how we go over the pistol portion. And then from there, we'll show you how to do everything with once fired brass or any kind of dirty brass. And then we'll progress on to progressive loading. And then sky's the limit. We'll just go over any tips and tricks and any kind of different setups that I use, or if there's any information that people want to know. But until then, appreciate you watching. Any questions or comments, just put them down in the comment section. If you, as always, if you want to see me go over any kind of subject, reloading or not, or anything with firearms, just let me know and we'll go over it. Until then, we'll see you at the range. All right.